This conference will now be recorded.
Let me make sure. Can everyone online hear me okay? All right, so as I was saying, this week we leave general positive psychology and we're going into PSYCAP. So each week we're going to do one of the elements of PSYCAP, which is hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism. So, okay, great. Thank you, Rachel. All right, so let me ask the group, and online you guys can get to the chat. What 1 minute of mindfulness technique did you try from last week?
I did breathing.
You did the breathing?
Yeah.
Did the 5 in and 5 out or some variation of that? Okay, good. How did that work?
It was calming, especially I went out of town this weekend and was reliving a lot of memories, and I was overcome with a lot of emotions, so I had to use that to calm down a bit. So it was very calming for me.
That's great. So you were able to pull on that when I've done that too when I can't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I've used that because it immediately puts me into a relaxed state, which makes it easier.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but that's great for powerful emotions too.
Yeah.
And it's so great you were able to think of it because we get so hooked right on that, following that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Who else?
I did the loving kindness one because I've never heard of that
Yeah,
until last week. And my sister-in-law, her due date was on Thursday, so it was perfect timing. And she just went to Labor Day, which is kind of crazy. Like my wife is going up to Milwaukee right now,
okay.
so that was a fun one. I did that for
her.
and then obviously like someone you're upset with or you feel like I guess nothing about. That was kind of interesting, or not. I won't say nothing, but what do you call it? Like there's no necessarily good or bad feelings.
Yeah.
Which is always a tough one to find. I never know who to feel that.
It could be like
your,
the person that gives you coffee or mail or, somebody you just don't think about or you may not have thought about. And what's interesting is you'll put them, they become not neutral. For me, after I've thought about it, like after I've taken the time to care about them.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that was fun. Like that.
Good.
I did not apply anything last week.
You did, that's okay. You know what? I continue to do it for years now and hope and look for tricks to do it better. So that's great. So loving kindness meditation, the breathing. Anybody feel that they were more mindful? Did they see it? Because the practice of the breathing and practice of the meditation will result in more mindfulness.
What exactly, when you say mindful, do you feel more mindful? What does that mean? Like,
that means when you're in the moment, like you're completely paying attention to what you're doing, you're not multitasking, you're not eating, and like for me, this is big, like I'm not eating and reading. I love to do that. I don't know if that's true with like reading the cereal box, but like I want to be doing something else when I'm eating because I can't be bothered to just really sit there and pay attention to eating. Yeah. So that's one thing.
Again, being out of town this weekend, I think I was the only one that didn't have a phone out. Everybody's like, why are you taking pictures and everything? Nah, man, we gotta let this sit in the brain, man. You gotta
just be.
You gotta be here, man. Everything. And so, yeah, I think, and then for me too, I've also been trying to take some of the techniques to the younger kids that I teach. And so it's been fun. We're continuously working on amplifying gratitude.
Oh yeah.
And so it's especially worked for I think for 5th and 6th graders, and it's funny. I had one of them tell the other kid like, man, that felt good, man. I almost made me want to cry.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, it's cute. So I think because I've been doing it, I've focused on it more. So it has manifested itself in where I'm just like, yeah, let me be here,
Yeah, and I've noticed once I've done long meditation retreats, like a weekend, I come back, I'm really paying attention to people, right? I'm really focused on them, picking up all the cues. And when I've been away for a time and I haven't done it, I find myself like just impatient and, all right, I got to get to the next thing. So anyway, it's all of these things, being grateful, savoring, all of these things are, I find, interactive, so they help. Being mindful helps you be grateful. all of that. Being grateful, how should be mindful. So anyway, good to hear some examples. You know, I'll also share one. I was also out of town, and there was a moment where I was feeling duress, right? And I was able just to sit with it and try to understand, why am I feeling not right, you know, and to really just sit with it and not just push it away or try to make it better, but to really kind of explore, what is it? And it was like, oh, there's these multiple senses that are being hit, just sort of think about all the things that were playing into how I felt. So it kind of helped me understand negative emotions as well, not just positive ones. Okay, so today we're going to do hope and change. And I want to start off by asking you to think of an individual in your life that has high hope. And I like to think of hope as determination as well. Hope can be a misleading word, but.
So somebody, instead of saying hope, somebody with high determination?
Yeah, you could say high hope or high determination. Either one.
Cliche for myself.
Okay, yeah. And then I was going to ask him, what makes them so hopeful? What makes you so hopeful?
I'm just an optimist. I just feel like there's so much vastness in the world, and that creates just opportunity unseen, and it's there. It's like whatever you want to do, whatever you want to be, whatever you want to create, it's all there. Everything is there for you, and you just got to go and get it. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Think of a high hope individual.
Do kids count?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think kids by definition, right? Most of them.
I think my child's high determination to get her phone back, and anything else she's lost in the last couple of weeks, that she has not earned, because she thinks I'm not paying attention. Her determination about that is cute. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna pretend like you forgot, because I just want what I want. And I'm like, oh, no.
So she's got a strong will to go after
And
it.
it's like my nose don't mean anything. And she just looks at me like, huh? Like actually the other day she went, huh, you're so smooth. Did you just like can't touch me? No. So I think that like the reality that like kids aren't actually affected by the things that they want. They don't understand what circumstances of life. Like it's like, no, you lost the privilege. You have to earn it back. It's like, no, you're just gonna give it back to me because I'm your kid and you love me. That's just as far as that goes, where it's like.
Well, and I think also in their lives, they have very little going on, and you and the phone are it, right? So it's a driving force because they have one thing that they're after versus we kind of get, I think we get stretched, as you've got competing demands, all of your drive gets split between things, and kids, man, they have, just very few. Yeah, they are. And I was actually reflecting, when I was preparing for this, I was reflecting on comments my parents would make, when I wouldn't give up, right? It's very irritating for a parent, but it is a sign of high hope, so. All right. Okay, so hope is the process of thinking about one's goals, combined with the motivation to move towards the goal, which we're going to call agency, and the concrete ways of achieving the goals, pathways. I think this might be like my most favorite one in the PsyCap, because I feel like it's the easiest to do, it's the most gratifying. Okay, but in order to change, clients, anybody you work with, they need to hold a belief that hope and change are possible. And remember, this is going to come from growth mindset. So if you're coaching, teaching clients, whatever, and they have a fixed mindset, it's going to be hard to work on hope. So make sure you've addressed fixed mindset first.
Is this like normal functioning people?
Yes. Okay. So hope is made up, I really say hope is made up of two things, pathways and agency, but they're anchored in goals, right? They can't exist without goals. And so this what power are the goals, and it's what the person wants to achieve. And the agency is their belief in one's ability and their tenacity to achieve the goals. So this really gets into, give me a little bit of growth mindset, but also, do they believe they were born to do this, right? Or do they believe they deserve it on some level? And the last one is pathways, the way power. And these are possible routes or alternatives to goal achievement. Okay, and so goals are the anchors for hope. Hope can't exist in a vacuum. But you have to articulate and clarify the goal as well engage in the activity of bringing the goal to fruition. And that's what we're going to do. I sent some handouts for you guys online. So if you're online or you're accessing this after the fact, if your email's in my system, you've gotten an email about the handouts I'm about to use. Okay, so hope and optimism predict many desirable outcomes: achievement, less anxiety and depression, good social relationships, and physical well-being. And the opposite of this really is learned helplessness, right? So does everyone remember the experiment with Marty Seligman, the father of positive psychology, did the experiment where he had dogs and he would give them shocks and they couldn't escape and they would just give up. Oh, okay. This is a classic psych experiment. So he had dogs and he had where they could get away and they couldn't get away. And when they couldn't get away, they would develop learned helplessness. And then when there was a path out, they couldn't even see it. They had just given up. Now, and this is how, it was a huge revelation in how people function, and that if they endure enough bad things, they do begin to give up hope, right? But something I think I learned in positive psychology was actually 1/3 of the dogs developed that, and 2/3 of the dogs did not develop learned helplessness, which I never learned I always learned about the learned helplessness. Very similarly, how we learn about post-traumatic stress disorder, and that is a small percentage of people who develop that, but the other 80% have post-traumatic growth, right? And that's not really talked about, but not to minimize post-traumatic stress disorder, because it's a very real thing and trauma is a very real thing, but we also can work with that to become more resilient. Okay, so benefits of hope. Snyder's one of the main authors, Snyder and Lopez. And Lopez has a book, it's Raising Hope or something like that, but it's a very famous book. But it's correlated with self-esteem, problem-solving abilities, perception of control, optimism, positive effect, and expecting positive outcomes. So the more hope you have, the more you're likely to have these things. Okay. And here's just a little evidence. Coaching can enhance hope. So there's a study done assessing the effects of a solution-focused coaching program. And after they participated for 10 weeks, they had increased goal-striving, well-being, and hope. So your future jobs, clinician, counselor, HR, teacher, psychologist, will all involve coaching of some sort, right? And so this is my favorite technique. And when anyone comes with a problem, this is the first thing I'm gonna recommend. So this is what we're going to do the rest of our time together in here. So what I want you to do is to think of a goal related to school that you want to achieve, and write that down, and let me pass this out. Okay. So think of this goal and write it down.
Does it have to be, should it be like my goal is just to graduate in 3 years flat. Is that,
There you go.
that's cool?
Yeah. Whatever it is.
That's it. Now question.
Okay, so once you've thought of this goal, everybody got a goal? Yeah, okay. Okay, identify your hopefulness about meeting this goal on a scale of 1 to 10, just to see where you are. And this would be if I had a client who was pretty low. This is where I might do some digging and look at fixed mindset if I hadn't already had a chance to look at that. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna have you do is clearly define what it is you want to achieve, right? So if it's not clear, if what you wrote down is not clear, you want to make it clear. 2, what pathways do you have for this goal? And I'm hoping to share a handout with you after the fact. But what we find is that individuals, and I think about a good friend it happened to this week, got some bad news and was crushed, just immediately crushed. Things looked very bleak, right? And so the first thing that I talked about was, okay, this is your goal. Let's just sit down and write all the pathways to it, right? And as she began to write the pathways and we began to brainstorm with one another all the different ways to get where she was going, this one pathway that had been blocked had caused so much distress, and just the act of writing out all the different ways was helpful. So what I want you to do is just to take a couple minutes and brainstorm, what are the pathways to you achieving that goal? All right, so I want to just go through a couple of examples. So I'm going to take one from online and one from in the room, right? So graduating in 3 years, which is the soonest time you can do it in the business psychology program, right? So what are your pathways to that, right? The biggest holdup is the dissertation on whether you know, right? So, you know, one of the pathways would be creating a dissertation milestone for each month, right? Picking an advisor early, so, you know, so picking an advisor early, just all of these things, you just write them down. Reading so many journal articles a week, right? Because that's you know, you need to get to 50, 60, 70. So you know, sort of how are you going to do that every week? Yeah.
So I put for mine, I will file my dissertation by January, which is something that I put on myself, right?
Okay, so to
And
define
when we
it.
say- Right, and so when we say pathways, then that's what you mean, essentially finding.
Well, that's I think what you just listed is a milestone,
Okay,
defining it by January, right?
right, and then, I essentially put the same thing, I will lean on my professors for guidance and help.
Yeah.
I will keep track of my performance, and so,
And so then I would get even more specific. So for example, and I just happen to know this because I teach this class, research methods, you need to have had 20 articles read before that class.
okay.
So if you're starting right now, that's a couple articles a week.
Mhm.
And that would further your topic. So that would be, okay, so that's one pathway, right?
Mhm. Put that on there.
You know, so, and more will become evident as you move on, right? So just sort of giving you an idea of how to do that. And then one of the ones here was a successful proposal defense, right? And as I think about what that is, you know, I would check, am I an expert and have I read all the articles in that area? That would be, you know, can I stand up and be the expert? That's what you need to do to be successful in a proposal. 2, did I give my proposal, you know, out in the 4-week time frame, making sure I got feedback within 2 weeks. Maybe you want to meet with people if you didn't understand the feedback. Looking at other successful proposal presentations. So asking friends maybe that have already proposed to look at theirs, possibly meeting with people and talking about maybe what was the hardest thing for them, what do they wish they'd done, you know, so those are examples of pathways to a successful proposal, right? You know, and another one mentioned was IRB, right? So for me, that would be really paying attention to the IRB training, looking at some successful IRB applications that are similar to yours. If it's qualitative, you know, you want to look at qualitative, it's quant, you want to quant, right? So there's certain steps. And so what I like to point out is that people are like, I'm going to go after a goal, right? And they generally have one way. They think of one way and they stop. And I'm guilty of this too, right? And then when they get blocked, they give up. And so the key is to, number 1, write out many pathways and to tell yourself there are many ways to this goal, and maybe some you haven't even thought of yet. And then the next thing is you're going to plan for obstacles. You're going to plan for each of those pathways to be blocked. And what are you going to happen when it's blocked? I think, so again, what we're doing is, if you haven't heard of ego depletion, it's basically the notion that we have a certain amount of willpower each day, right? We wake up with a full bucket of willpower, and as the day goes on, it gets less and less, right? Every decision we make, every temptation we avoid, takes a chunk out of it till it's gone. So what happens is that when one of our pathways gets blocked, this brings up a really strong emotional reaction, right? Kind of cuts us off from our prefrontal cortex, especially if it's some form of rejection. Or you start to panic, or you start to think, you know, if you're starting to feel threatened, right? And you can't think. And the key is, if you already know what you're going to do, when that obstacle gets blocked, you don't have to think. You don't have to worry about that disconnect. You're going to go, yeah, I planned for this to happen, and this was the next thing I'm going to try, right? And then I'm going to go down. So do you see how you're creating this buffer? It's almost like you're taking care of yourself for what's going to. And there's a great book out. I might have mentioned it in this class called Triggers. It's fantastic. One of my former advisees recommended it to me, and talking about why we always say we're going to, you know, lose weight, go work out, whatever, and we never do. And it's because when we plan in our brain, think about this, and I'm such a futuristic visionary person. That's one of my character strengths. I really can do this well. I can clearly see what I want to happen in the future, and guess what? There's no bad weather, there's no traffic delays, there's no problems in my plan in the future. There's none. It's perfect. Everything is perfect. My life is perfect, right? So we're excellent planners and terrible doers, is what this book says. We make these beautiful plans, and when it doesn't go exactly like we thought it was going to go, we become disillusioned. But for me, really helping myself understand that I plan under perfect conditions, and then so this is a way of planning for the imperfect conditions that will happen in your life. It's more realistic, right? You're visioning in a realistic way.
I have a perfect example of not thinking of multiple pathways.
Okay,
So
yes.
I took some of your advice and did block my calendar off at certain times.
Yeah.
And I was at 3 o'clock, and I was like, because I have to do the article from Teach for Dr. Papa's class. So I was like,
Yes.
I'm going to read, one a day and knock them all out so I'm not overwhelmed. But what I didn't realize is that what if it's not quiet? Like, I need to be quiet when I'm reading these.
Okay.
So I went to the library, but it was like at the wrong time. It was like whispering, but I could hear it. So I left the library. I went to student lounge, and again, it was bad time. There's a lot of people that were doing group projects. It's like, okay. So then I tried to sit outside, but it was too cold. So I ended up sitting in the crib of their lobby area because Panera was closed too. But then I got kicked out of there after 45 minutes. And I spent like 2 hours reading only 20 minutes, looking for a place to read.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. It put me behind in the day. I had to stay up, later that night to that class.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a perfect example of not thinking of possible things that could have blocked that pathway. I didn't even think of it.
Right. So headphones.
Didn't have those.
No, that's what I'm saying. So there's one, headphones with
Yeah,
noise,
perfect.
like, and you can there's like a white noise app
That would have been
that
much
you
easier.
are definitely going to need once you have the kid.
Yeah.
You were not going to live without the white noise app.
But you're right. It was frustrating.
Yeah.
And it completely derailed me.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things it's going to say is, as we move on, is to handle it with humor.
Mm.
Right. So today it took me like 4 attempts to get on the bus, which I was just, and at some point I was like, the powers that be do not want me to get on the division bus, so I'm going to go to the North Avenue bus. But anyway, yeah, I was feeling stymied. Okay. So agency, how confident are you in your ability to meet this goal? What's your motivation? So we're going to work on increasing both. And we're going to do that through doing your pathways, which you've done, planning for obstacles, thinking about your agency through narrative and curious questions. Okay. This is from Lopez's book, Enhancing Your Pathways. So here's a list of things that we want to do. And one of them is listed twice. But when we have a big goal, graduating in 3 years, proposal, the first thing you want to do is break it into steps or sub-goals. And for UIO people, this is project management 101. Break it down into the steps. And then further, any step that you can further break down, do that as well. Then begin the pursuit of your distant goal by concentrating on the first sub-goal. Don't focus or look at the big picture. It's easy to get overwhelmed. I have a good one. I rehabbed a house with very little knowledge of how to do it, but I was determined that I was going to do it and that I was going to teach myself or learn from people and figure out how to do it. But there were times like I would walk up to work on something I'd been working on every day, but I would just kind of look around and think about how much more I had to do before it was livable and just sit down and cry. Right? The whole thing was just sitting and think, why did I think I could do this? What was I thinking? This is too hard. I'm not going to make it, and have a pity party for 10 minutes, get up, and then say, no, this is what I meant to do, which is more of the agency I'm going to get to next. But when you start looking at the big picture, it can especially a dissertation. That's really one. You got to just do the next thing in front of you and not look up. Practice making different routes to your goal and select one, the best one that can change. Mentally rehearse scripts for what you should do if you encounter a blockage. And by this, you really don't want to get attached to one way to the goal. Here's another big one. If you need a new skill to reach your goal, learn it. So another way that people get blocked is, let's say they're working on their dissertation and they can't come up with enough articles. And basically they're kind of stuck because they can't come up with enough articles. So this could either be that their topic is too narrow, or it could be they don't have the library skills to find the articles, right? So part of it is being aware that I don't have the skill. Somebody else could do this better, and that's when you make an appointment with a librarian, go in and have them help you sit in one of their classes, learn how to be better with the databases. Does that make sense? I'll be after a goal and I'll start feeling a lack of energy for it, and I'm coming up to a part I don't know how to do, which means I'm lacking a skill, right? And a lot of times it's a quick YouTube video or several, especially when I'm trying to make an Excel document or I'm trying to get Excel to do something very specific. That's something I can go get a quick video on. Okay. Here is an example of mind mapping. I don't know, you might be doing this in PD. Are you doing any mind mapping?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. So mind mapping is where you put your goal, and then you can just start, how can you reach this goal? And you can see they've got their steps, and then they've got even sub-steps, and this really allows you to be creative and sort of throw it out on paper and not go in that outline form, right? So just a little more creative way to think about all the paths. Okay, so enhancing agency. This is when you tell yourself you've chosen the goal and it's your job to go after it. And I love this one, the don't. Don't allow yourself to be surprised repeatedly by roadblocks that appear in your life. That's just normal. Learn to talk to yourself in positive voices. And we're going to really emphasize this in one of the other weeks, but I'll say it now and I'll say it again. Our biggest fear is that we can't handle it, not the fear of what's going to happen, right? So our biggest fear isn't that we're going to lose our job. Our biggest fear isn't that we're going to fail this class, or that we're not going to graduate or not finish our dissertation. Our fear is that we can't handle those things, right? So just changing your talk to, I can do this, I've got this, I can handle this. It's life-changing. And I love to tell the story that when I start to pack to go out of town, I get nervous. I'm going to forget something. But also now that I'm packing for 2 kids, it's like, you're not just thinking of yourself, you're thinking of everything that could go wrong for 2 kids. And as I'm doing it, I find myself getting more and more uptight and out of time and panicked. And when I learned this, I was leaving the country by myself with my 2 girls for 2 weeks. And as I was packing, I just learned this, and I just was walking around the table as I was packing, and I was saying, I can do this, I've got this. And it immediately uplifted me. I found myself smiling, and I just felt good about it. Whereas in previous time, I would just be like, oh, I don't know, did I get everything? I'm so worried. And that self-talk really changed a really unpleasant task to a pleasant one. I think I was also thinking this in the pathways too, like, if I don't have it, I don't have it. I think that's, and I would really say this, talking to yourself in a positive voice is really kind of tied to resilience. And the next one recalling your previous successful goal pursuits, that's self-efficacy. So what you want to do is think back to a prior time when you've been successful in a similar situation, right? So what did you do to graduate from your master's? Or what did you do to graduate from your undergraduate in time? Or maybe if you didn't in time, what was that thing and how are you going to avoid that again? But, you know, when you're taking on a big project, okay, when did you last take on a big project that was successful? And really, what did you do that made it successful? And I think this is one I reviewed in stats class, you know, so when people were really nervous about the case study, when have you been successful before? And what I'm trying to get them to pull on is what got them through getting ready for a big exam in the past, right? Because I think in a new environment, and it's all in a different way, it's a take home, you know, they might not feel or remember their skills from undergrad. All right, be able to laugh at yourself.
You kind of did that with us before.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah. So yeah, I walked everybody through hope and self-efficacy.
Yeah, within like the pathways and.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like that was I didn't know what you were doing, but it led to a lot of success. I feel
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully, and really to get rid, my main goal is to get rid of the anxiety.
That's what it did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So this I do walk people through a really quick version of this. Okay, be able to laugh at yourself. Yeah, today I was like, I am desperately trying to get to work, and it took like an hour. It literally took an hour of trying to catch a bus, and at some point I was just like, this is just funny. Like here I am, PhD, and I can't catch a bus. Find a substitute goal when the original goal is blocked solidly, right?
An example.
So let's say you're trying to get a visa to work in the US and that gets blocked, right? Well, then now you can work for an American company abroad, right? Don't give up. Like it might still be there, but like, what's the second best thing that could get you back in? Okay, enjoy the process of getting to your goals, right? So you don't want to find yourself in this place where you can only be happy or you can only be relaxed once it's done. And there's a great book on this, Sean Achor, Happiness at Work. And he really talks about that people wait until they've achieved something for them to be happy. Like I'll be happy when I get the next promotion, right? But actually when they get the promotion, they're not happy because now they need something else, right? And for me, this is like tapping down your want monster a little bit. You don't want to be so focused on the goal that you can't enjoy the present moment. Okay, so with clients, you can go through descriptions of their past goals, experiences, and successes. And those will be fertile ground for planting hope. So if they're in like, let's imagine you're coaching a derailed person, you want to refer to the successful things in their past when they're in a tough moment in the present to get them to increase their hope and get them back on track. Then you want, when you're asking about the past, direct the person's attention towards hopeful elements. And so here's a list of questions. I'm not going to go over them, but for those of you that are in coaching, you can use some of these questions to go through it. Okay, but here are some. I like these. What is the best you could hope for given the situation? I hear that you're currently facing X. Given what you can only control, given that you can only control your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, what could you hope for? What are your hopes for the future? Where do you see yourself a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What will motivate you to work towards your goal? What excites you about your goal? And what do you need in order to bring this goal into fruition? So those are just some example questions. Oh wait, one more. What do you hope for family and friends? Okay, so there are some barriers to hopefulness that we need to address. A lot of times people don't want to be hopeful because they're afraid of being disappointed. They don't want to go for that promotion, or they don't want to go for that project or degree or whatever, because what if it doesn't turn out, right? And hopefully you saw from the previous slides, not having hope is sort of depressing, right? And having hope is tied to, I mean, you're not going to get everything you go after and you want to be resilient and bounce back, but you don't want to not go after something because you're afraid you won't get it. There's also this fear of jinxing themselves by holding this positive intention, you know, like if I think positively about myself and really, you know, think I should go for this promotion, I'm going to ruin it, right? That's, so you're hopeful, maybe you don't have this one.
Nah, we all get that way, but I was like, what, people think like that?
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. You know, they're afraid to mentally put themselves in picture it, because they're, you know, it's like they're being greedy or something, I guess. But this visioning of yourself achieving this goal is very important. If you're not thinking of it and imagining it and writing down all the steps to get there, guess what? You're not getting there, right?
That sounds so much like entrepreneurship. Because you have to be so hopeful, and you have to see something people can't see, but you also have to believe in it. And no matter how, like, you know, whoever your detractors are, you must maintain this attitude that, like, you're going to adapt an army of advocates, and you're going to have a successful business. And in 3 years, for your long-term vision, you're going to accumulate at least like 850K in revenues. Like, you have to be like so hell-bent on that vision that no matter what anybody says or does, because you have to have contingency plans too.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I'm sure you know this, you have your own company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, oh, okay, didn't see that coming, but now I know, because I don't want to lose any more customers. Or, okay, we don't do that, but maybe we could. And so it's a lot of like the stretching capacity too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of this, I've thought about this a lot as where I've applied it and where I've not applied it in terms of my own business, right? So yeah, I feel like I've gone through some of these stages where I don't really see myself as being successful. And then, you know, each new client, it's like I can see a little bit more, right? When I'm doing something new, right? If I'm doing something I've done for a long time, that's easy to be confident, but when it's something new, it's like you need to see it, you need to experience it, you need to wear it, right? So yeah, very much. And there's very much this sense of, well, this is how I thought it would go. Well, this is how it's actually going. And part of that's like, oh, and there's this other route over here. Well, that's not the route I wanted to take. And then several people keep saying, yeah, but that's a really good route. And I'm like, oh, okay, well then maybe I need to, you know, so it is being fluid and, but paying attention. Yeah, yeah. And I got some great advice that was saying your gut as a business owner.
Sometimes.
Yeah, like to really pay attention to your instinct, you know, that sometimes there's some things you can't articulate, but that you're feeling that are important, not to ignore that. Okay, so we talked about this learned helplessness, this state where nothing you do matters, right? So obviously you don't want to be in that. The last one, I think, which is my favorite to do, anxiety and worry about the future inhibits the ability to think hopefully about the future. So this is where you don't want to shove it down. So like, I'm just going to pull out the dissertation proposal, right? So you're going to have a little anxiety and worry about whether that's going to go successful. But if you're worrying about what could go wrong, you know, it's the element of you just want to write it down and get it out and then go back to your positive picture and do something with that. That could be telling you something, but you want to stay out of the state of anxiety and worry. You know, oh, thank you. Yeah, that would be terrible if both my USB sticks didn't work. So what's a third? You know what I mean? So like, it can help you plan, but you want to be really imagining yourself being successful, right? Because that imagining is going to help you do the right steps to get there. Okay, so we're going to take just a couple minutes. I want you to, I know we already worked on increasing your pathways. Increase your agency. Try to do one thing to increase your agency. Think about similar goals you've achieved in the past. Plan for your barriers, or note what they are, then plan for things to go wrong. What are you going to do? And so this week, what I want you to do is just to continue to work on this goal, really fleshing this out. Some things are going to come to you after we leave this classroom, but really work on that. And and then I'm going to ask how it's going on social media. So what's your one thing you can start doing today to increase your hope? Oh, well, it's like take another couple minutes to think about it, and then what are we going to do this week? Okay, so thank you everyone for coming, and I will see you online.